Demons! Lizards! Thousands of years in the past, this guy invaded Lustria using armies of demons, so that's what we'll be attempting to recreate today. But before we can do that, I need to tinker around with the Immortal Empires map to get it more accurate for the time period. So let's get started. We're going to change our starting settlement to Demon's Gate, as this is where the demons would have initially come through. And then disband anything that isn't a demon from my army. I'll then give complete control of Lustria over to the Lizardmen, so it goes from looking like this to looking like this. And finally, I gave myself the southern and eastern parts of the Chaos Wastes. The objectives for this campaign are as follows: to occupy or raise settlements such as, and I'm probably going to butcher these names, but Zahutek, Huatl, which according to the lore could be any of these three settlements, Tlaxlan, Tlansla, Zotl, and finally ending with a siege on Itza. But before we could do any of that, we needed to deal with this slimy bastard, Oxyotl. I started out by moving towards the west, and also remembering that my cultist was not a demon. Sorry mate.
Please, no.
I also made sure that Kairos had Spirit Leech in his arsenal, and began buffing up demons in the tech tree. After a few turns of moving west and recruiting, my army started to look a little bit something like this. And then boom, Oxyotl had declared war on us on turn 7. It had begun. As I moved towards Oxyotl's second in command, Tom Philly, I hoped and prayed that my almost doomed stack of pink horrors were up to the task. And then shit hit the fan when Tehenahwain declared war on us as well. But there'll be time for worrying about that later. For now we had to worry about winning our first battle against Oxyotl. The pink boys and their friends lined up for what was to be a spectacular first fight. The only thing standing in their way? An army of mostly skinks. I quickly realised that using this army was pretty similar to using a needler from Halo. You just point the pink thing in the right direction and pull the trigger. I swarmed his dinosaur with the screamers of Tzeentch, set fire to a lot of his infantry, and just for good measure, Spirit Leeched the fuck out of his leader. And with that, victory was ours. Now it was time to find out where the real enemy was hiding. I've got a sneaky suspicion where he might be. Before I flushed out that slippery chameleon though, I made sure to keep buffing up my demons. I also recruited a secondary army. Over the turn though, the sneaky bastard launched a surprise attack. I was pretty sure we could do better than a valiant defeat. The terrain wasn't in our favour, so I moved my army of pink and blue up the hill so they were level with Oxyotl's forces. We managed to create a pretty good defensive formation on the hillside. But where was the invisible skink? Nowhere, because he's bloody invisible. I sent Kairos over to flush him out and Spirit Leech him to death, which seemed to really piss him off because he sent all of his forces at me right after that. My double line of pink horrors mostly held while I was flying Kairos around and just burning people to death. And while that was happening, I just got my pink horrors to focus fire the dinosaurs. And just like that, another win was in the bag for Tzeentch's pink and blue army. And there was even a dinosaur that was so pissed off, he decided to trudge through all of my pink horrors. Hey, stop it, cut out, stop it. That loss was certainly a setback for the skink, which gave us enough breathing room to continue pushing west. Right to where he'd retreated to, and I didn't even grant him a full battle this time, I just auto-resolved him out of existence. As I sent Kairos over to the never-ending chasm, I was faced with a pretty pathetic attempt at a resistance by the Lizardmen, so I thought I'd show them what the full power of this Needler army could do. Some of them ran away before they could even reach us, and the ones that did reach us, well, let's just say Kairos had a little bit of fun. Did I feel bad for the slaughter I inflicted upon them? No, because they went for the slimy skink. As I was pushing west, I noticed that Cult of Sotek had some armies lurking about, so I recruited some more units into Adamantis' army. If Oxyotl thought he could hide and recover in his crater, he was sorely mistaken. I then performed some Tzeentch bullshittery to weaken his defences even more. With the Oxyotl still out of action, the time to strike was now. And strike we did. Well, strike they did actually, because we besieged them and over the term they actually came out to fight us. So, hey, everyone's a winner. I slotted the pink fellas into a gap in the terrain and decided to hold my ground there. I called upon the darkest, twisted secrets of chaos in order to... No, I'm joking, I just spirit leeched him to death again. And ran away like a coward. I did have quite a lot of fun doing this to his army though. I mean, like, you hate to see it. You really do hate to see it. I mean, it's textbook stuff, you know, Kairos pokes and then the machine gun of pink activates. The skinks ran at us in their hundreds, and in their hundreds, they fled. While their main army was being massacred, one of their units tried to attack us from behind, so we set them on fire. Yeah, works pretty well. Score another win for the boys in pink. With their final defenders vanquished, it was a simple case of pressing the auto-resolve button. And that was it. The invisible skink was no more. With the Chaos Waste secure, it was time to turn our attention to Lustria and its first line of defence. A lizard who shall not be named. But the unnamed one struck first and over the turn began to besiege me. Our chances didn't look so great, but we had to try our best to defend the territory we had just claimed. With Kairos unable to assist, it would be up to my second in command, Adamantus, to see off the invaders. But despite the big man not being around, things were looking pretty similar around here. Adamantus was doing Tzeentch's work, raining down Law of Metal spells upon the lizards' heads. He even routed their lord, using nothing but pink balls. And it wasn't long before we had more skinks running for the hills. Ah, what a sight to see. Under truly difficult circumstances, Adamantus had pulled it out of the bag, and he kept going. With a single click of a button, the invading lizards were dead. I also managed to catch out the Lord of Sotek when he overextended into my territory. It predicted us a valiant defeat, but we've seen that before. It was almost identical to the battle we just fought with Adamantus, but this time we had Kairos and a Flamer of Tzeentch. I thought our chances might be pretty good. I flew Kairos around to hopefully drag some of their more dangerous units away from the main fight, such as their salamander hunting packs. And then as usual, I lined the boys in pink up and got ready to fire. I employed my usual tactics, but this time I wasn't really sure if I spirit leeched him or sort of just sucked his soul out of his body. It's probably the same thing, who cares. Kairos then decided to fight a dinosaur. He fired some spells right into its arse. And with the arse spells out of the way, the battle was won. No rest for the wicked though, as Cult of Sotek were back on us. I sent Adamantus to link up with Kairos to face them together. Jeez. I noticed that their armies were separated, with one being on sea and one being on land, so I attacked the one on land, and he retreated to pretty much nowhere. And we managed to catch him, so that's pretty good. So far, most of my armies had just been pink horror doom stacks, but now we had some spawn of Tzeentch to really get into the lizardmen. I sent all of the big boys straight in to see what they could do, and well, this is the result. After only a short period of time, the battlefield was littered with the bodies and blood of the lizards. The spawn of Tzeentch were really having some fun. With bits of skink flying everywhere, and the pink horrors and flamers and other monsters in my army supporting, it was a pretty easy victory. Once again, we defeated the unpronounceable one, and given ourselves enough breathing room to go after his second army, which we caught in the middle of the water, and promptly auto-resolved. The path to Lustria was now wide open, so I moved Adamantus to link up with Kairos, the Citadel of Dusk being our first objective. As I attacked, however, the defending army just kindly ran away, so that was nice of them. The first settlement on the shores of Lustria was ours. And on the same turn, I managed to use the changing of ways borrowed time to get my guys to the next settlement. Just like that, we'd got ourselves a pretty good foothold in the south of Lustria. I kept moving my armies along the coast, and with the Cult of Sotek's armies nowhere to be seen, we pretty much had free reign of the south of Lustria. This continued for some time with no real sign of any sort of resistance from the Lizardmen. But hey, I wasn't complaining. Feeling emboldened by the Lizardmen's lack of defence, I got Kairos to declare war on one of the lesser Lizardmen factions, thinking it would be a sort of easy war. Which at first definitely was the case. I'd rock up to a settlement, use magic to open their gates, and bish bash bosh, the settlement was mine. I sent Kairos to attack an army that was stuck in march stance, thinking it would be an easy battle. And oh boy, was I wrong. The weather was poor, and thus visibility was low. The enemy outnumbered us by a large margin. Their army contained beasts of war and saurus and skinks of all kinds, many with range capabilities. And by that I mean some of them literally have blowpipes and the others have frickin' laser beams. But whatever, right, we'll deal with it. The boys in blue were lined up and ready for a fight, with Kairos himself overlooking the battlefield. We started the only way I knew how, by spirit leeching their leader to death. And then I flew Kairos in front of their army for probably about half an hour, wasting all of their ammunition.
Sky demon waste great that's. Chick no demon chief kill great him or one.
Anyway, after wasting all their ammunition, they charged their entire army at us. The spawn of Tzeentch exploded some of their faces on arrival. But they began to struggle when the saurus started swarming them. The battlefield was a mess of carnage and chaos, with spells, monsters and blood flying high into the air. As great monsters clashed, lesser creatures were trampled underfoot. The flamers of Tzeentch attempted to stem the tide of lizardmen by pouring blue flames onto the battlefield. But one by one, the great beasts fell. The ones that remained tried desperately to escape the horde of demons. The Lord of Change again was victorious. But not without a massive cost to my army. I mean, pretty much everyone was dead. I thought it was about time to once again link up my two armies, so I sent Adamantus inland and I sent Kairos to link up with him. Before any more lizards declared war on me, I thought it was about time to recruit another army, so I got Sarthoriel the Everwatcher. Over the turn, Cult of Sotek started being a nuisance again. And so did the Southern Sentinels. In fact, I started losing a worrying amount of territory. So with this in mind, I thought it was about time to start wiping out some of these factions completely. And we were making pretty good progress.
We already know.
But for each settlement we took, one of those two factions would take one back. It was a game of cat and mouse. No, seriously, we were losing a lot of settlements. Every time they put up a defence, I'd open their gates and we'd roll on in. It was about this sort of time that Adamantus had been with us for so long that he could become a Lord of Change, so welcome to the team. My two big feathery boys had secured the coastline, so I moved them back down to the south, where they could link up with the newly formed army of Sarthoriel. I put Adamantus and his new form to work immediately, retaking some of the settlements we'd lost. And I sent Sarthoriel along the eastern coast to try and get a little bit more spread on my armies across Lustria. This turned out to be quite a costly mistake though, because Sarthoriel was in march stance and ended up losing most of his army in the first fight. Just barely surviving with some pink horrors and some flamers. This was a fairly annoying setback, but luckily we still had two armies in the vicinity, who were doing a pretty good combined effort of mopping up the rest of the Southern Sentinels. Kairos had finally got powerful enough to unlock one of the best spells in the game in Final Transmutation. This is very nice. And I couldn't seem to catch a break because one of my settlements was under siege again. The southern sentinels just didn't know when to quit. Yeah, I lost that battle pretty bad and Sartorial was dead. But Kairos and Adamantus were here to avenge him. And avenge him they did. I then proceeded to retake the entire southeastern coast of Lustria, attempting to make my way back down to where I first invaded from. If I could control the entirety of the south, it'd give me a buffer zone to which my other settlements in the Chaos Waste would be safe. As I was coming back down, the lizardmen defending kindly moved out of the settlement for me. So I retook that and then headed back down to where I first began my conquest. And as I reached that settlement, they kindly ran away again. You slimy coward. With the retaking of the Citadel of Dusk, I thought it was about time to once and for all finally put the Southern Sentinels out of their misery. So that's what I did. I auto-resolved them out of existence. Just like that, the Southern Sentinels were no more. With my safety net between the Chaos Wastes and the south tip of Lustria complete, it was time to start heading for our real objectives. I sent Kairos and Adamantus to travel by sea up the coast, and they immediately got attacked by two Zlanhalpek armies. I set up a defensive line as Kairos, hoping to hold off both Lizardmen armies until my reinforcements in Adamantus had arrived. Unfortunately for me, however, the Lizardmen had artillery. Two solar Bastillodons absolutely pounded our units while we were currently out of range to engage them. While my new hero unit, the Blue Scribes, and what seemed like a million pink horrors absolutely blasted the hell out of any oncoming lizards. Their approaching pterodons were immediately removed from the sky by hundreds of pink missiles. Kairos was trying to avoid being taken down by the lizard's artillery while trying to turn dinosaurs into gold using final transmutation. Away from the battle, the lizardmen reinforcements had begun to arrive. But so too had Adamantus and the rest of the demons. Lines once again clashed over the corpses of thousands of lizards. But once again, the endless barrage of Tzeentchian magic proved to be far too much for them, as lizards and their leaders fled in their thousands. The only corpses that littered the battlefield that day were the lizardmen. Damn, sorry, got all intense there, but yeah, we won anyway, so yeah, all good. I re-recruited Sartorial and got him training units again, and over the turn it finally happened. The strongest of the Lizardmen factions had finally declared war on us. The real battle for Lustria had only just begun. And begin it did, because Itza just came for us straight away and just started taking settlements from us. At this point though, Sartorial was ready to join the rest of the guys, and with an army to boot. A pretty well-rounded and quite powerful army, if I don't say so myself. I realised though that even with all three of my armies together, I wasn't quite prepared to take on Itza yet, so I forced peace with them through Tzeentchian bullshit. It was at this point that Krokgar also wanted in on some of the fun, and he immediately began taking back settlements that I'd taken earlier on the coastline, so I forced him to make peace with us too. Then Itza declared war on us again, so I forced them to make peace with me again. And the cycle continued long enough for me to send Adamantus the whole way home, recruit some units, and get him back in time for tea. With all three of my armies now at full strength, I could move them up the coast and begin finally working on our main objectives. Before I'd even landed my demons, I managed to take one of my objective cities by, well, magic pretty much, and swiftly renamed it based on the lore. It wasn't long before all three of my armies had landed on Itza's shores. Lustria was about to bear witness to the combined might of three Lords of Change. Immediately, another objective city was within sight, and nobody to defend it. As quickly as the first and second cities fell, the third was already within my grasp. I decided to test my three mega armies against a pathetic garrison of lizardmen, which I, won that battle within 1 minute and 22 seconds, so, yeah, pretty good really. It was at this point that I realised the invisible bastard was alive again and had rejoined Itza, who, speaking of Itza, had already started retaking some of the settlements I'd taken. I started being lore accurate with my movement as well by teleporting all three of my Lords of Change through Lustria. Man, if you were a lizard man, you'd absolutely hate to see me coming over the hill. You're just there like, don't worry everyone, we've closed the gates. No, opened gates. And I'm well aware we could have got a decisive victory here, but, you know, you gotta fight some of them. I sent the Vortex Beast through the newly opened gates of the settlement. which was probably terrifying for the lizardmen defenders because it looked something like this. I was dropping zinc eyes all over the place. I mean, like, the vortex beasts were having a whale of a time. Kairos was getting in on the fun, killing some lizards who were trying to escape across a bridge. You know, it was just a great time all round, and yeah, that's that. With another victory under our belt, I swiftly renamed our new settlement to be law accurate once again. Over the turn, the lizards showed how brave they were by completely abandoning their final settlement again, which I decided to swiftly retake. And then not long after that, as I teleported my birds back towards the west, I realised I was completely fucking surrounded by literally every single itza army in existence. So that was great. And what do you know, over the term, they all converged and attacked me all at once. So, yeah, prepare for the biggest battle that you've ever seen. The sky crackled with the chaotic energies of the winds of magic as Lustria prepared for a bloodbath. I set up in the best strategic formation possible under the circumstances. Yeah, I just corner camped, yeah. And it wasn't long before the largest host of lizardmen that you might have ever seen descended upon my tiny little position. Luckily, my reinforcements began to arrive, so yeah, I packed them into the corner as well. The strategic view of the map looked like this, and they had a lot more reinforcements left to come. They tried to flank me, but because my guys were in the corner, they couldn't really get round, so my pink horrors just started unloading on them. I could be wrong, but I think in total they had somewhere along the lines of about 6 Dreadsaurians, which was, worrying to say the least. So the most important thing I had to do was deal with those, so I got Kairos to fly around and drop final transmutations on their heads. I got my flying flamers to burn anything that came too close. More and more Dreadsaurians kept arriving, and I really was not killing them fast enough. And I'm just going to speed this part of the battle up, but let it play, because it looked absolutely insane. Oh, and what's this? Oh! We finally got one. 1 down, 5 to go. Their Croxigore was making a bit of a mess of my pink horrors. Plus they had a number of different dinosaurs just rampaging everywhere, which was just great. The battle was an absolute mess already, and both sides still had more reinforcements to come in. Pink and blue fire and missiles and the roar of lizards and dinosaurs was probably all that could be seen and heard throughout this entire battle. It took a great number of casualties and time, but it seemed like the tide was finally turning in our favour, with a lot of lizards and dinosaurs either routing or dying. The corpses of Dreadsaurians were beginning to litter the battlefield, which boded pretty well for me and our chances of winning this thing. Reinforcements arrived on both sides, but as the skinks and saurus came onto the battlefield, they were met with vortex beasts. So, I mean, I guess their cavalry tried to do a little bit, but yeah, I mean, come on, let's face it. We had a few dino vortex beast one-on-ones, and well, yeah, it looks pretty cool. Slowly but surely, though, we were beginning to win this fight, with lizards and dinos routing all over the battlefield. Like many other battlefields before, the casualties of the lizardmen were numerous. And with a pretty heroic victory under our belt, it seemed like Lustria was ripe for the taking. With most of their armies either scattered or destroyed from that battle, the remaining objective cities were fairly easy to take. And take them, we did. With all but one of the objective cities lying in ruins, We had one final city left to take.
What is to come? All is already written.
Kairos and the other two Lords of Change marched their armies towards the final destination, the city of Itza. And using the Lizardmen's most hated tactic this entire campaign, I opened the gates of Itza using magic. The final battle was upon us. The city of Itza contained an inner sanctum where one of the most powerful Slann, Lord Croak, lay waiting. My army were under immediate fire from the city's defences, so I had to rally them quickly and get them towards the walls. We took some casualties getting up the hill, but it wasn't long before we were in prime position to be laying siege to the city. The siege, according to the lore, lasted 4 centuries, but it didn't quite take us that long. Kairos was up to his usual tricks of turning dinosaurs into gold, and I had my flamers positioned in the doors, just melting all the lizards they could see. I dropped an infernal gateway on any defenders of the lizardmen that tried to get close to any of my units, and it wasn't long until the walls and inner sanctum were breached, and demons poured into the city. And with that, our campaign was complete. In his final moments, Lord Croak witnessed 12 bloodthirsters breaching the inner sanctum, which probably looked a little bit something like this. As they tore him apart, Lord Croak summoned a mighty spell, banishing the attacking demons and delivering Itza from destruction. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below about what you did or didn't like. I'll be trying to improve and make each video better than the one that came before, so constructive criticism is more than welcome. If you'd like to see more like this, don't forget to subscribe. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.